So I've put my saucepan on the heat. It's not on the highest temperature because what's important is I need that butter to melt before I get this up to a boil, and I've got my flour ready with me next to the cooker. So as soon as that butter or margarine has melted, then I can turn the heat up and get this to a rolling boil. If this water is not hot enough before you add your flour, you are going to end up with a really soft, sloppy mixture that will not make you a decent choux pastry, and you might as well throw it away and start again. When I show you what it looks like, it's actually a really, really thick sauce. So my butter, I've just got one little blob of butter left, so that's nearly melted, and I can turn that up and bring it up to a rolling boil. So I'm just stirring it just to help that last tiny little bit of margarine or butter melt. It's just one last little bit there, but I've got to have this at a rolling boil. So the butter's all melted, and as I say, do not add your flour now. So you can see I've got bubbles starting, and when I've got a real rolling boil like that, what you need to do is shoot all of the flour into there and stir it really, really quickly. Beat it up so that there are no lumps of white flour anywhere, and what you need is one really, really thick paste. And now I've got that, I'm going to turn the heat off and beat that in the pan. So it needs to be just like that, one really thick dough, no white in it, and coming away from the pan in one lump. If it's a sloppy mixture, it really is no good for the next stage of the choux pastry. Okay, so I've got my choux pastry in here, and the next thing to do is I need to add the eggs. And if I put them in this pan now with this steaming paste, they're just going to cook and scramble. So the best thing to do, I'm going to put them on the plate, put this dough on the plate that I had the flour on, and just spread it out to increase the surface area. You can see it's steaming as I'm spreading it, and that should cool down a lot more quickly. And while that is cooling, I'm just going to wash my saucepan, so when it's cool I can put this back in the saucepan to add the eggs, but not until it's cool. Don't worry about washing up your spoon because you're going to use that again in a moment. Okay, this mixture is now cool enough that when I put my hand on the back of it, it just feels lukewarm, so I'm going to put that back into my saucepan. And I have everything else ready. So I have my 2 eggs, which I'm just going to break the yolks and lightly beat. I've got a piping bag, a greased baking tray and a pair of scissors. And what you need to do for your choux pastry is slowly add the egg into this mixture. And you have to beat this really well. I've only put a little bit of egg in there, I haven't put a massive amount in, and what you'll find is the outside of the pastry, it seems to go a bit slimy. You really have to work to get the egg mixed up in there, and as you work this in, you want it to go back to being one paste again. So it starts off and it's still, as you can see, it's still a really, really stiff paste, but it's in one lump. And because it's in one lump, I can add a little bit more of my egg. The trick is not to add too much egg. This mixture has to be soft enough to pipe, but not so runny that when you pull it out, it's not actually going to puff up and make the shape. Choux pastry is one of those pastries that uses air, or one of the mixtures that uses air as its main raising agent. We're going to get steam from the water that's going to help this to rise, and then we're going to get steam from the eggs. So it's the steam that's actually going to make this rise. So again, I've put my egg in. It's all back to one lump. You can see it is starting to get softer, and I'm just going to keep adding small amounts of egg to this mixture until I have it the right consistency. Right, I've got all of my egg, and it took all of my egg to get the consistency that I wanted, and this is what your mixture should look like. It should still be holding its shape and in peaks, but it is a much, much softer mixture than when we started. So this now needs to go into a piping bag, and if you can't manage to hold the bag in your hand, fold the top back and scoop the mixture into the bag, pushing it down as you go. If you find that quite hard, what you can do is put your piping bag into a measuring jug and scoop the mixture in that way, whichever way you do it, and I prefer to do it in my hand. Try and make sure that as much of the mixture as possible is at the bottom of your piping bag, and you can put all of your mixture in there. If you push the mixture down, if you're doing it in your hand, it will just gently pull the bag through your hand, and I'm just going to use a spatula to make sure that I have all of the mixture out of this saucepan, so that I can make as many profiteroles, choux buns or eclairs as I can from the mixture that I've got. Don't really want to be wasting any of this mixture. So that is all the mixture from the saucepan into my piping bag. When your choux buns are cooked, they should be nicely golden brown and risen, and this is actually not the same batch that was on the video earlier, because when I came to put the video together I seem to have lost part of the video, so this is another batch I've made. However, what you need to do is take each one of these, and because I'm going to use these as profiteroles, I'm going to make a hole in the bottom. When they come out of the oven, we've already said steam is the main raising agent, and if you just leave them on the baking tray, any steam that is still inside these little buns will condense, and it's exactly the same with eclairs. So the steam would condense inside the bun or the eclair, and it would make them go soggy. So you must work quickly and just make a hole in the bottom and allow them to escape. That one's split in half, don't worry about that. By the time it's filled with cream and has a topping on, it will not matter at all. And you would do the same with eclairs. If I was doing this at school, I'd be putting these onto a cooling rack. At home I don't have a cooling rack, so I'm just popping them back onto the hot baking tray, but holes up. I have got a bit of melted, just plain melted chocolate, and I've got some cream in my piping bag. And again, I'm not going to worry about putting a piping nozzle in the end of here, because what I want to be able to do is get one of these little choux buns, put the edge of my piping bag in there and just squeeze to fill that bun with cream. So if I have a nozzle in here, it's going to make it more difficult. So just squeeze until you can actually see the cream starting to come back out from the hole. And because you've made the holes in the bottom, it doesn't matter if the cream starts to come back out again, because when you put these in a pile, nobody will notice that the cream is coming out of the hole. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's do another one. There we go. So for a moment I've just done 5 of those, and what I'm going to do is just put 1, 2, 3 and 1 on the top for a minute in that bowl, so that I have a little pile of them. And if the ganache was set, I could use the ganache, but as my ganache is not set, I'm just going to pour melted chocolate over the top of these. So you can put as much or as little of the chocolate or the ganache as you like over your profiteroles to serve. You can arrange them in any way you like to serve them. Okay. So those are there. I've got another one here which I've filled with cream, and if you wish you can just dip those in chocolate, stand them upright and leave those to set. Or if you would prefer, I've made a bit of icing, just glacé icing, so nothing particularly complicated, just water, icing, sugar, and in my case I've put a little bit of coffee in there, and I'm going to make this one a little coffee bun by just dipping it in the icing, bringing it out, just shaking and putting that to one side. Okay. So when you've filled these, you can do whatever topping on them you like. If you make the hole a bit bigger in the bottom, you can also possibly add some fruit. You could add some fruit to the cream and even cut them in half and then put them back together. These little ones I am going to use possibly as a trio of desserts. The bigger ones I am going to pile up for profiteroles. One of these baby eclairs that I've made, and it is really a baby eclair, I'm just going to fill one of those. It's going to take quite a bit more cream, there we go. Cream's coming out the end. And then if I dip that in the chocolate and wipe that off, I have a really small eclair that I could use for a dessert. So I'm going to finish these off in a minute, but you can use your choux pastry to make profiteroles with chocolate, or if you made your ganache a bit earlier with a ganache, you can fill them with cream and dip them in icing.